side hustle for a college kid, man, learn how to sell. Because when you graduate college, you know, if you ain't going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to go work for somebody, the first thing you're going to have to do out of college is sell yourself on why that person sitting across the table is supposed to hire you.
This is the Real Talk University podcast, where your hosts, Andre and Christian, explore success stories outside of the classroom.
So first, we're going to start off with a two truths and a lie game. So if you give us 3 statements about yourself and have one of them be a lie, we'll try to find the lie out of the 3.
2 truths in a statement?
2 truths and a lie. So you tell us 3 statements and one of them's false, and we try to pick out the false one.
I have a doctorate's degree, and I have went to college for many, many, many years. I'm a recovering drug addict, and I have, at the age of 28, I was homeless on the streets of Chicago.
Wow. I'm going to say you're not a recovering drug addict.
I'd say the first one. You didn't go to school that long.
So I do not have a doctorate's degree.
Wow. That's awesome. So we're going to get into the other parts throughout the interview, obviously. So from my understanding, this is your first podcast, which is cool.
Yeah, man. First podcast. And honestly, I appreciate you guys for seeing something in me to have me on your guys' show. It's an honor. What I'm doing right now is I am pivoting to creating my personal brand, coming out with courses, and it's really to help other people out there wherever they're at in their life to understand dreams are real, man. A lot of people quit dreaming, and I quit dreaming for years. And at 28 years old, I was able to clear my head and start dreaming again. And my dreams are finally coming to real life, and it's an amazing experience.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome. And we're just here to help you get that story out, obviously, to as many people as possible. So really appreciate you taking the time. So if you could just tell the audience who you are, what you're about, and kind of what you're up to these days.
Awesome. So my name's Eric Cline, and a little bit about me is I've had a super troubled past, and as far as not being around the right people, not having the right information, for years as a kid, I was the kid in class that was constantly getting in trouble for being real hyper, not paying attention. And it wasn't that I didn't pay attention in school. It was just I wasn't paying attention to things I wasn't interested in. And at a very young age for me, my parents ended up getting divorced, which I had to make a major decision at I think I was in 6th grade to go with mom or dad. And it was the first big decision I ever had to make in my life. And I made that decision based off trying to make somebody else feel better. And it was the wrong decision for me to make at that time, picking one, a mom or dad. So the reason I even bring that up is from 6th grade to 28 years old, I was a lost individual. I was making decisions to make everybody happy but Eric Cline. I got heavily into drugs at a very young age, 14 years old. From 14 to 28, I hit bottoms that I didn't know that I would ever hit. Being homeless on the streets of Chicago is something that I never saw in my future, but it was probably one of the biggest blessings that had ever happened to me at 28 years old, because I knew at 28 it was either I have to make massive changes in my life or my life is going to go nowhere. And death was reality for me, man, at 28 years old. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, where was the point where you found out the reason, why you wanted to turn it around, how you were going to go about that?
So for years, I used to always try to change to I used to change to try and keep a job, change not to get kicked out of school. I was changing to make mom happy, dad happy, a girlfriend happy. And it wasn't until I was ready to make some change where it was the sole purpose of me wanting to change was for Eric Cline. It was for me to want to not live the life that I was living anymore.
Wow. Yeah. That's powerful.
And then how was like hitting rock bottom helped with your perspective now when you look about like having money and being financially secure? Does that like change your output or outlook on life?
Great question, man. So for me, there's probably people out there that have seen a lower bottom than I've been at, but I've seen a bottom that for me, I always keep in the back of my mind. And for me, it's motivation I never want to have to live paycheck to paycheck. I never want to have to wonder whether or not if there's a trip I want to go on, whether or not I can afford it. Has it changed me being from an all-time bottom to having some success in my life? Obviously with success comes changes. My lifestyle has changed. The people I hang out with have changed. My perspective on life itself has changed. But the one thing I think I've done really good at is I haven't allowed myself to change, meaning I believe I have a huge heart. I care about other people. I know the struggle out there is real for a lot of people, and at the time I didn't know that there was a better life out there. And now that I've been able to go from homeless to having a life beyond my wildest dreams, I want to be able to cast that to as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah, man, that's huge. I think that's just key with a lot of people these days. Obviously just having that opportunity to share the things obviously that you went through that could help so many people. And then obviously it's true, like you seem to be such a humble guy, like your ego hasn't changed since you felt success for the first time, which is great. And that's the kind of person that people like us would want to learn from. So that's awesome. And
appreciate
so
that.
Yeah, of course. So another thing we ask is, like, obviously you're an entrepreneur. You have that mindset to go out and do things for yourself. So like, can you like recall a time in your past where that kind of like sparked, or was that kind of something that continued over time?
So I came down to South Florida at 28, and when I came down here, I was a union carpenter from Chicago. Like, all I had ever known was hammer and nails. Like that's as far as my professional field went. I came down here at 28 years old to check myself into a treatment center. I'm from a small town outside of Chicago. I say Chicago, but I'm from a small town outside of Chicago. It's called Rockford, Illinois. And when I came down here to South Florida, going from Rockford to South Florida was a huge change. It was a culture shock. It had opened my mind up to a world that I didn't know existed. And for me, a very pivotal moment was I was living in a halfway house for recovering drug addicts, just to get a little bit of structure in my life. And at the time, I did not have a license. So someone had given me a bicycle, and I was riding my bike from my halfway house down to Fort Lauderdale Beach. And the road that I took, the road is called Las Solas, and it is going down houses to the left and to the right of you, huge multi-million-dollar mansions, freaking yachts that are worth, $100 million. Like, I had never seen this in my life. And I used to ride that on my bike for 7 months straight, and I did it every single day. And it had opened my mind up to a world that, hey, there's people out there that are doing something that are able to generate massive amounts of money. And I didn't know what it was, but it was the first time my eyes and my mind had ever been opened up to something like that. And the crazy thing is 9.5 years later, I live in this neighborhood. Going down Las Olas, like when I live in one of them big ass houses now.
That's cool, because it's kind of the same thing we're trying to do with our podcast. Like, for a lot of people, they don't see those opportunities. They don't realize like what kind of life they could actually live outside the classroom. Because like when you're in school, like there's so much going on with class, clubs, just trying to keep up with your grades, secure like a job with a big firm. But like obviously Christian and I, we just want to like share these kind of stories so that they can see like it's not just getting good grades, getting a good job. Like there's more to life. Like there's a lot more opportunity out there if you're willing to go out and like do what it takes. So that's really
I hear it.
All right. So could you take us through like the point where you were looking at these big houses to like living in the big houses? How'd you connect those two things?
Yeah. So my first job down here in South Florida, I'm heavily tattooed, right? And I came down here with all these tattoos so I went from being a union carpenter where it didn't matter if you had a ton of tattoos, like to, for the first time in my life, I had to go out and actually find a job. So my first job down here, and when you say, can you connect this from, driving by the houses to living in them, my first job down here at 29 years old, I was bussing tables at a restaurant on the water. I was bussing. I wasn't a waiter. I was actually the bus boy. So I was taking 2 buses to work and 2 buses home. And I had worked at this establishment. I'm not going to say the name because it's irrelevant, but I was working at this establishment, and my first 2 weeks working there, I got my check and I opened it up, and for 2 weeks of work, it was $147. So I knew like you can't live on $147 for 2 weeks. So I take my check, and I still have this check today. I've never gotten rid of the check, but I took the bus home. I took a long bus ride home, 2 different buses. I got back to the halfway house, and for me, opportunities come in many, many different forms. There was a sign hanging on my door as I was walking into my halfway house, and it said telemarketers wanted $15 an hour. So I ended up calling this flyer, and I was super honest with the guy. I said, yo, listen, I just got out of a treatment center. I said, I'm heavily tattooed. I don't have any degrees. I've never sold a thing in my life, so I don't have any sales experience. I'm like, but I just want to get that all out of the way before I come in and have you guys interview me, because I don't want to waste your time and I need to find a job. And the guy on the other line, he said, none of that matters to me. Why don't you come in for an interview? So another life experience was being honest got me to the next step. I wasn't hiding who I was. I was super honest. So I ended up going into an interview with this guy. And I walked into the company, and it was a sales organization of about 200 sales reps. And it literally made the hair on my arms stand up, because, people were dressed nice. They were manicured. Their hair was done. They were wearing nice jewelry. And I showed up in my outfit that my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife, she went to, you guys have like the Rosses and Marshalls there?
Yeah.
Right. So she went and bought me like a $30 outfit to show up to this interview. And so I sat down with the guy. We had an interview. And at the end of the interview, he goes, I want you to pick anything in this room, and I want you to try and sell it to me. So he had the nicest watch I had ever seen. Right. So I looked at the guy's watch, and I just went into a full-blown pitch on why I thought this guy should buy this watch. And I had gotten in a zone I've never been in before. I didn't care who was sitting across the table. And at the end of my pitch on why he should buy the watch, he looked at me and he goes, "You can start Monday." So I ended up getting the job. So obviously I did a good job selling the watch. So to connect the dots from seeing the homes to living in the homes is when I walked into my first sales job, like I knew it didn't matter what kind of education I had, whether I came with a college degree. I knew for the first time, like with a ton of hustle, a work ethic that was unstoppable, like I could be as successful as I wanted to be. So I ended up working for this company for about a year and a half. And I knew, so I went from being a mediocre sales guy to being his top sales rep within a year and a half. And it came because one, I was super passionate about what I was doing, and 100% of what I do is selling stuff over the telephone. I don't sell products face to face. I'm actually getting into that arena right now, but in a year and a half, I started caring about this guy's company more than he cared about his own company. I was the first one to it still didn't have a license at the time. My wife would drop me off. I'd be waiting at the front door with my lunchbox. And would let me in the door. And when they would shut the lights off at the end of the day, we're talking, I'd show up at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they would kick me out at 10, 11 o'clock at night. There was a drive in me that I didn't want to go backwards. I wanted to do nothing but go full steam ahead. And man, like sales became my new passion. And I knew like the sky was the limit for me on how high I could go. So I went from working for an individual to then leaving his company and starting my own company in a fourth bedroom of my home. So we went from, it was crazy. My wife and I ended up saying, you know what? We've made this guy enough money. I think if he can do it, we can do it. So I ended up leaving his company. We incorporated our first LLC. So we were entrepreneurs. And we went in a fourth bedroom of a home, cold calling consumers, offering our products and services, to going from a 2-person operation, being me and my wife, to last year, I employed at one time over 150 employees. Wow. Last year we did over 34 million in gross sales. So it's what got me there though is, man, I just didn't quit dreaming. Like I knew as long as I showed up every single day, it didn't matter like if I woke up in the morning and I was having a shitty morning, as long as I pressed through that, because not all days over the last 9.5 years have been easy. Like there's been some days that my old self would have given up and, not got up to brush my teeth in the morning. Like there's been some hard days, but I know that the hard times pass and there is a payoff on the other side of every hard experience we go through.
Yeah, that's incredible. Are you still in contact with the guy that gave you the first telemarketing job?
He actually worked for me.
I was just going to say he probably works for you at this point, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he, 3-4 years into me having my company, he ended up coming and working for me.
Wow.
Yeah. It's crazy, man.
Do you remember what you said during that interview about the watch? Like for not selling anything prior, like take us through that moment.
What did I say when I sold this man his watch? Like, if I knew what I said back then, I probably blacked out.
Yeah.
And like, just, I don't know what I said. I really don't. The nerves had to have been going, and it might not have been what I said that convinced this man to hire me. It may have been my commitment to just answering and pushing through a question he knew I was uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it may have been nothing to, I may have completely flopped on the sales pitch. Who knows? But just me stepping outside of my comfort zone and getting uncomfortable and trying to sell a guy a watch when I've never sold a watch in my life, like that could have been the reason he said, you start Monday.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. Because sales is tough, especially for someone that's never been in the industry. Like, was it hard when you first started? Like,
great question. So there's a lot of people that consider themselves in sales. I mean, ultimately, you guys are in sales. We all have to sell ourselves in some way, shape, or form, whether we're selling our vision, we're selling ourselves in an interview, we're selling a product, we're selling a service. So when I first got into this sales arena, there's different levels of success, I believe, when it comes to selling. There's people that live paycheck to paycheck that are selling. There's people that are completely broke that consider themselves professional salespeople. There's people that have a life beyond their wildest dreams, and there's people that will never have to worry about their finances again a day in their life. And for me, it's really, what stage are you at when it comes to selling? I believe there is an art and a formula to converting a lead into a sale. And it's really, how far deep are you going to go into the sales process? How much of your time are you going to commit to understanding the consumer on the other end, the product knowledge of whatever you're selling? And then most people that I've come in contact with, when you're selling something, about 80% of the people that you're gonna offer something to, 80% of them are gonna turn you down. There's about 20% that are actually gonna say yes to what you have to offer. And it's getting it's having enough knowledge and ammunition in your arsenal to be able to convert no's into yeses, and a lot of professional salespeople get uncomfortable when they hear the word no. Like, even the buyer on the other end, if they tell me no, it's uncomfortable for a buyer to say no. So there's a lot of uncomfortability in that sales cycle where both sides are uncomfortable. And I've just gotten to a place where my confidence is so big at this time where I don't get uncomfortable because I understand the sales cycle. It's a part of the sales cycle.
Yeah, I think that's key when it comes, like, on the side, I have like a part-time job at like an on-demand sales firm. So I'm like making cold calls for like 2 hours a day.
My man.
I started that like last June, like right after I graduated high school. And like,
good for you.
The first day to like where it is now, like you're just like reading off a script with like a stranger on the phone, and I was like shaking. But like now, like once, like you said, it's like all about confidence and understanding like what you're actually doing. I feel like that's just key.
Yeah. Hey, the best way to cut your teeth. So when I came up in this business, the sales gig is, I started off cold calling consumers. If you can master the cold call, let me tell you, you're like leaps and bounds of anybody that tries doing this stuff. So yeah, keep at that, man. There's a life experience. There's a life experience that you're learning right there that no college will ever teach you.
Fact. So, let's see. Like, obviously, so I actually saw you speak on stage at 10X. Is kind of how, like, I'm aware of who you are and like we're aware of what you're doing. So, like, take us to everything that like led up to that, like how you met Grant, like how he's helped you with your process, and then obviously to this, like what you spoke about at 10X.
Great. I get asked that question a lot. So how I came in contact with Grant was, I was online researching how I can make myself better. Period. End of story. That's the only way that I came in contact with him. And there was a video of Grant talking about his past and how he struggled with drugs and alcohol and all this stuff. And it was the first time that I related to a man that had a level of success that Grant has. And he was very open. He was very real. And I knew he wasn't sugarcoating some of the stuff that he was saying. There's a lot of people that you can find where you don't know whether or not their past is their real past. But there was something about Grant where I knew he was telling me the truth. And so he had said he had shot out an email in this YouTube video I was watching, and being naive, I thought he really gave me his email address. So after he got done talking, I ended up emailing saying, yo, Grant, give me a call tomorrow. I want to talk about buying your program. And the next day, somebody in his office called me, and I said, you guys must not have read that email. I said I wanted to talk to Grant. So they're like, well, Grant's not going to talk to you. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not buying your guys' products then. So they said, why don't you come into the office? We'll talk to you one-on-one. And if Grant's here, we'll let you talk to Grant. And I said, well, pick a day that Grant's in the office, because if I show up and Grant's not there, I'm not buying your guys' products. So I ended up going down. He moved from California to Miami. So I went to his office down in Miami, and I sat with two people in his office. They pitched me. I saw Grant off to the side. He was doing one of his Cardone zones or something. And they got done pitching me, and I said, all right, as soon as Grant's done, tell him to come out. I said I wasn't buying nothing until I met Grant. And so he got done filming. He comes out, and him and I sit and talk. I get my first picture with Grant, and I did not buy his university at that time. And the reason I did not buy his university is I did not trust in myself. That I didn't trust myself enough to invest into myself. So that is the only reason I did not purchase. It wasn't because they didn't pitch the product right. They didn't pitch a service right. I got to meet Grant. Everything that I wanted to do, I was able to accomplish there. But I did not trust in myself to spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a program, not knowing if it was going to help change my life. So fast forward a few months, I end up buying Grant's program. He does boot camps. He does 10X conferences. When I buy a ticket to his conferences, I am always front. I'm the first person. I'm front row. And the reason I do that is I want to make sure when Grant's on stage, he sees me at every single one of his conferences. So I ended up going to a couple of his boot camps he holds here in South Florida, and I was front row. I was always the guy raising my hand, asking questions, didn't give a shit if it was a stupid question or a hard question. Like, I was raising my hand because I wanted a question I had in my head to be answered by a guy that I looked up to. And he would constantly call on me. So, I kept going to his conferences. I started doing the one-on-one mentoring with Grant. I pay huge money to sit in front of him one-on-one, an hour at a time. And the intimate conversations that I've had with Grant, it's not like an hour of a ton of great stuff that he gives me. I usually walk out of these with a golden nugget that helps change my life. And, he held his first 10X his second 10X conference. It was in Las Vegas. And I just bought a ticket. I was sitting front row. I had no clue it was going to happen, but on like day 2 or 3, Grant was on stage and he starts talking about somebody, and he's like, he doesn't know this is getting ready to happen, but I'm going to call him on stage. Eric Cline, come on stage. And man, my heart just starts going a million miles an hour. And so I still don't recall walking on that stage. I don't remember hugging him. I don't remember anything that I said at that conference. I know I remember turning around, and I swear to you, I saw all 9,000 eyeballs that were looking right at me. It was just crazy. But another part to the story is the night before, I went to go smoke a cigar by myself. My wife stayed back at the hotel. I was smoking a cigar, and I was texting back and forth with my wife. I said, Shyla, there's going to be a time where Grant's going to see such a massive change in me. He's going to call me up on that stage one of these times. And that was the night before. I end up the next day at that conference. He ends up calling me up on stage, which was crazy.
Yeah, dude. I feel like everything you've talked about so far, like with that driving by the houses, seeing the thing on the door, and that, like everything that like was good that happened to you in your life was kind of like manifested almost, or like there were signs of it before it happened, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And then, so, fast forward, I get done with the 10X Growth Conference with just a quick snippet on stage. And I end up going back, coming back here to South Florida after leaving Vegas. And I put on my wall the day I got back from 10X Growth Conference that I will speak at 2019's 10X Growth Conference. I put that on my wall the day I got home. The growth conference we just had in Miami, Grant did a success story on me and got me on stage and allowed me to talk. So it's crazy, man, how I bring it back to dreaming, man. I'm a dreamer at this stage of my life. Like, I believe anything I can dream up, there's a way to make it happen.
Yeah, I think that painting behind you kind of signifies that too, with the clouds. I like that a lot.
There you go, man.
So what has Grant done specifically to help change your life? What advice has he given you?
I would say one of the biggest pieces of advice Grant's given me is he helps me understand how confidence is such a key element into getting to the next level in your life. The number one sale, and I said this, and I say it all the time, man. The number one sale, the hardest sale I've ever had to make is selling myself that I am capable of doing whatever I want to do in my life. Like, my limitations are only set by me. Nobody else can set those limitations for me. And Grant has, every time I sit with him, when I leave his office, I'm so fired up that I could run through a brick wall.
That's how we feel after a lot of interviews too.
Yeah, it's confidence, man. I have, if you would have seen Eric 10 years ago versus the Eric today, the major change that you're going to see is I am a confident man that believes in myself. That's the biggest change.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So we're going to go into what we call a lightning round. It's like 4 quick questions. And before that, if you have any questions for us, feel free to ask. But otherwise, like, your story has been like super inspiring so far. So again, just
right
really
on, guys.
Have you on the show.
All right. Rapid fire. Let's go. Lightning fire.
Let's do it. First question. What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self? I know this would probably be tough for you.
Say that one more time.
What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
What advice would I give to my 18-year-old self? People, places, and things will ultimately determine the outcome of you 10 years from now. People, places, and things is huge. At 18 years old, I was hanging out with the wrong people. I was hanging out at the wrong places, and I was doing all of the wrong things. Wow. Period. End of story. People, places, and things.
That's awesome. That's cool. And okay, the next question is, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
What is the worst advice I have ever received? Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Hey, and some of the worst advice came from some of my closest family members. Some of my closest family members gave me some of the worst advice, and it was, don't do that, because if it doesn't work, what are you going to do then? You have a family, Eric. You have a kid. You have this. You have that. There was so many excuses for other people in my life to tell me not to do something. And if it wasn't for me having, selling myself, that I had confidence in myself to take that next step, I wouldn't be where I was at today. So some of the worst advice I've ever been given is don't do it.
Wow. Yeah. So what is the best advice you've ever received then?
Some of the best advice I have ever received is finding my why. For a long time, I used to do this for money. And don't get me wrong, we all still get up every single day. We hustle, we grind, and it is about money. But for me, it all changed when I found my why behind all of this is, growing up as a little kid, I was a middle child, and I always got hand-me-downs from my older brother. I only got one pair of shoes at the beginning of a school year, and I didn't get another pair of shoes until the next school year. There were times where I didn't have enough money to keep my cell phone on, to where when my mother called, she didn't know whether or not she was going to be able to get a hold of me. So when I was able to find my why, I never want to go back to living that lifestyle. I never want my kids to experience hand-me-downs. I want to be able to I want to break the cycle in my family tree of, you don't have to be average. You can be as great as you possibly want to be. And it is okay to talk about money. It is okay to talk about being successful. It is okay to talk about your failures, your dreams. And my why is, I am the first in my family to break the cycle and possibly change my future family tree to being the best that they can possibly be. So while I do get up and I do this, and I love a fat paycheck, there's more to it for me outside of just the money at this point.
Yeah, we've heard that from a lot of guests, really. Once you actually obtain the money, there's a lot more to that drives you, like what you said, going back to where you were and taking care of your family. So that's definitely something that we hope to achieve one day, to be able to put the money to the side, kind of. But what would you say is the best side hustle for a college kid right now that's looking to make some kind of money on the side?
The best side hustle for a college individual, I believe, is find something that is going to help you in the future, man. It may not, the side hustle may not be for right now. It may be for the future. Like my man here that says he's cold calling. You don't understand what that side hustle is ultimately going to do for you in your future. You're learning something right now that you must have to go through life. You have to be able to sell. So if your side hustle is going to be, if I were you, I'd get into something that's selling. People are always buying something, whether they're in a good mood, a bad mood, an ugly mood. If they're in a good mood, they're buying because they feel good. If they're in a bad mood, they're buying because they want to feel better. When the economy is shit, people are buying to make themselves feel good. When the economy is at an all-time high and people are rolling in dough, they're buying because they have money. You learn how to sell, the economy doesn't matter to you. You've learned something that will ultimately have you recession-proof, bulletproof, and you'll be able to write your own paychecks for the rest of your life. So side hustle for a college kid, man, learn how to sell. Because when you graduate college, you know if you ain't going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to go work for somebody, the first thing you're going to have to do out of college is sell yourself on why that person sitting across the table is supposed to hire you. And right now, there's a lot of people out there looking for jobs. So how are you going to differentiate yourself from the other thousands of college students that are looking for that same job as you? So my side hustle would be, what is going to get me to the next level when I get out of college, that all this time and effort that I've put in is going to help outside of college. You know, you always want to be better in yourself.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot on our show, like with the mindset of looking for a job or a side hustle is to work to learn rather than to earn, like especially at this stage.
You got it, man. It's all about learning, developing yourself, cutting your teeth, you know, getting some battle wounds, failing. Like some of my biggest successes were failing. Like, people always ask me, do you wish you could change your past? My past is one of my biggest successes. You know, people look at me cross-eyed when I say that, but it's like, there's not a lot of people that live the life that I live that has that in the back of their head, constantly spinning, saying, Eric, if you give up today, this is what is around the corner. Like, if you give up today, there's a lot worse than you're doing right now. So I have a motivation that I believe most people don't have, and that's my past.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, so last question here. It's kind of deep. We like to end it on this one to kind of get you thinking before we let you go. So what would you put on a billboard? Like, what message would you put on a billboard for the whole world to see?
What message would I put on a billboard for the whole world to see? It's never too late to become the best version of yourself.
Love it.
Yeah.
It's never too late to become the best version of yourself. Like, every day we are growing, man. If you're not developing yourself, you're dying, in my opinion.
Yep.
So just like today, this was a huge opportunity for me. You guys allowing me to come on this show is helping me become a better version of myself. Like, you guys may think you're doing this for you. I'm doing this for me right now. You know, we're both benefiting from this, but it's just ultimately, if everybody has the same mindset that the three of us have on this call, like, we're just trying to be better people. We're trying to be a better version of ourselves. We're trying to get a message out there that ultimately, if it resonates with one person, we're doing our job. But if you start multiplying this thing, you know, you guys keep hustling the way you're hustling. You keep getting people on this show. I'm going to continue after this podcast. Like, hey, this was the first experience for my podcast, guys. This shit's about to get big. So you don't forget about me, and I'm not going to forget about you.
Absolutely not. We always follow our past guests, see how they're doing, you know?
My man.
Well, that's all we have. I mean, if you have anything to ask us before we head out, feel free. But other than that, we're all set.
Hey, you guys are doing what you are doing right now is it's motivating in itself. How old are you guys?
19.
Yeah, we're both 19.
19 years old. Like, dude, you guys need to give yourself a round of applause. Like, you guys are on a whole nother level. There's not many 19-year-old kid, and I don't mean to call you kids, man, but you're kids to me, that are doing what you are doing. If you keep this up, I promise you, your future is going to be beyond your wildest dreams. I started my first business in a bedroom just like you guys are sitting right now.
Yep.
It's crazy. So, hey, my hat's off to the two of you. You're an inspiration to even someone like me that, you know, mentors come in many different forms. You learn from many different people. And one thing that I am very good at doing is keeping an open mind. My dog, I got a golden doodle that is barking right now, but I keep an open mind. And one thing that I've learned is just from this right here is you guys, man, you guys motivate me. I didn't know what you looked like. I didn't look into your Instagram very much because I wanted it all to be kind of an experience for me. So I didn't know I was going to be in your bedroom. Like in my head, I was going to be in this, you guys were going to be in this fancy ass studio and all this stuff. So like, hey, your guys' hustle is real. I appreciate it. Let's stay in contact and let's all rise to the top together, man.